Welcome everyone to DM Tips, episode 1.
Now the collector's edition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you count episode 0, but I mean, we're doing this just to piss most people off.
That's
or I'm doing it anyway.
It is a free comic book day at 0. You just hand it out.
Yeah. This one they have to pay for. Just send us like $30.
Oh my god.
Money order.
If we
to
talking
Guild of Fools.
I'm sure if we talk about Jesus saving their lives, perhaps that maybe we can.
You have to plant the seed for the next few episodes.
Yeah.
And
we tell you about this wonderful, excellent pyramid scam that we have. It's called Trump University.
All right. Well, I'm Josh.
I'm Joe.
And today we're going to be talking about a fan-requested topic: how to deal with problem players.
Murder them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how you go about doing it? Because when we were discussing this.
Well, let's first define the problem player. It's in my opinion, as the DM, my number one goal is for everyone to have fun playing.
Yeah, that should be what it should be.
And if one player is inhibiting that, they're a problem player.
Oh yes, very much so.
But there's obviously other ones. The person that argues the rules with you. Those are the easiest to deal with.
Rules
in my
Nazis.
opinion, because you just need to establish with them that you're the DM. Your word is law above the rule book.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what anything else says. What comes out of your mouth is law. Even if something you say in the past contradicts with what you're saying now, what you're saying now is what matters.
But you have to.
You have to do it. I mean,
you have.
They're probably gonna have a problem with that, but I mean,
right.
If you can kind of finesse your way into just explaining that it'll make everyone's lives easier if they just bend to your will in the nicest way possible.
Yeah. You don't want to be that guy. What guy we're talking about? That guy.
Yeah.
That guy that basically shows up with just an attitude that he can run the game better than everybody else, but doesn't want to run the game because that's actually something
that
called
he's
work.
He's the main character. He's gonna be the one sort of running the campaign, even though he's not the DM. That's a problem player.
Yes.
The first instance where you could be in a party where the best way to avoid a problem player, in fact, the best way to deal with a problem player is to avoid them becoming a problem player to begin with.
Yes.
You're going to have people that are going to come in with different attitudes and stuff, but you need to sort of, if you're just starting a new campaign, it's best to lay down ground rules along with all these house rules and stuff.
Yeah.
One of them being, you need to determine what the group is going to be playing as far as the group makeup goes, or what direction they're going to be leading the campaign.
Right.
Because if they're all happy-go-lucky characters, and then there's one like evil assassin in the party and starts killing off all their players, you want to avoid that happening to begin with.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with allowing other players to kill other players, as long as the other players should sort of expect that thing to happen.
Yeah, you can't do it out of the blue. What you really need to do is, like we said before in episode 0, is you're God. So we'll get to maybe doing a world building episode.
You are above God.
Well, let's not.
You pull the strings of the gods.
Not the God, a God. But what you want to do is establish early on what character classes go with what. You don't want to have a chaotic evil mage with a paladin. You don't want to have a neutral good party and have a chaotic good character that constantly goes out and murders people just because they don't follow their religion. See present day Earth. What you want to do is basically you want to make sure the characters line up. You can have neutral good and neutral evil, but lawful good and lawful evil that can sometimes work, but
lawful
not really.
Lawful good's fine. I don't have a problem with that. They're basically just a big Boy Scout most of the time if they play it well.
Lawful stupid.
I've played with people that played paladins in some of my campaigns that were lawful good, but nobody liked them. Their justification was, I'm lawful good, not lawful nice. That is a problem player right there. They're just an asshole just for the sake of being an asshole.
Lawful good, especially if you play the paladin class, should be the most outgoing guy in the party.
Yeah,
it should.
I mean, it should be the person who kind of wants to help anyone in any opportunity he can.
I mean, technically, and maybe this.
But I mean, I'm not saying it's black and white with lawful good. There are a lot of ways you can play it, but if you're the guy that's going to be like, I'm lawful good just so that I qualify as a paladin, so I can assert my authority and be an asshole to everyone.
Yeah,
that's technically you could get away with that, but you're an asshole.
Right.
But you need to let that player know it from the get-go that he's not going to get away with that.
And sometimes if you know your players, that's easy to do. But if you're, again, we're doing this for the first or second campaign GMs.
Best case scenario.
And you're not going to know these people half the time too.
Right. Best case scenario though is if you're hosting the game at your place.
Yes.
And you're the DM.
Yes.
The best way to deal with them is just kind of ride it out the rest of the night, and then never fucking invite them back again. They'll get the picture pretty quickly, and you wanted to see them. You don't have to deal with them. You just kind of shove them away and let them do their own thing, unless they're like, psycho murderer or whatever. Then
that's always a
probably
possibility.
want to do a little bit nicer than that.
Invite
but
strangers into your home.
Right.
The other thing too is that if you don't know the people very well, then I would suggest making them very minor characters to start off with the first few weeks. Don't make them major players, because you don't know these people that well, and it may suck for them, but they have to get used to you as a GM, and you have to get used to them as a player. And you may find out, like, the problem guy you think you're going to have, not really the problem guy. The guy that's been there, that's been your friend for 5 years, a complete moron all of a sudden, because random person walks through the door and they hate them, that becomes an issue.
If it's one of your good friends that's just kind of being a shitty player, that's pretty easy fix. You just tell them, hey, cut it out. It's not cool. Give me a fucking beer.
Yeah, especially when you're especially when you're dealing with people that are new, and also that you're starting out. You've got to tell people that, especially your friends, like, hey, this is the first or second or even third time I'm doing it. The first time you GM, you have to prepare yourself for it being a flaming disaster.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you got to, like, the first one you run, disaster. Don't even worry about it. It's like baseball. You'll get, if you bat 250 or 300, you're great, because most GM campaigns go nowhere. That you have to be honest. But to make it a fun campaign, you've got to make sure early on how to deal with people, and that's a tough thing to do sometimes.
Yeah, again, the best way to deal with it is to avoid it altogether. In fact, let's say you're running a campaign where you already have like 3 or 4 regular players, but you invite someone new to the group that's actually never played a D&D game before. You want to make the regulars aware that, first of all, it's difficult to get people into this sort of hobby, and if you're one of those assholes that immediately just kind of attacks a newbie for the sake of them being a newbie, you're ruining it for everyone.
No, that is the problem.
You're
internet fandom. That's what that is right there. Hi, I just happened to watch the first episode of the show. Isn't this great? Well, the show's in its 6th season. You noob, how dare you?
Yeah.
Be inviting.
Yeah.
It's what I always say. I worked at a comic book store for a while. The number of times that people have come into that store saying, I'm a first-time reader. Okay, great. What can you recommend? Recommend this. There's always inevitably one person that thinks they know better than you, and then shames that person, and that person never comes back. Right. And that happens all the time in fandom. Don't be that player.
If it does happen, though, you sort of need to try and stop it as soon as possible. Yeah. Another good way to deal with a problem player as it's actively happening is just strip them of any power they have in the game.
Yeah.
And then give that power to someone else in the party.
Yeah.
And have them just sort of not necessarily become a problem player, but if they want to, they could just kind of bully the problem player and be like, listen, man, that's not going to fly we're a party here. We need to work together, blah, blah, blah. But again, it depends on the game. Some games you sort of have to plot against each other. So if that's the case, really, you normally don't have that many problem players because you're all going to hate each other at the end of it, and that's what it's supposed to be anyway.
Yeah, well, not every. Well, yeah, if you're running a campaign that's designed to basically pit them against each other.
You're playing. Not necessarily a role playing game. When you're playing Munchkin or whatever.
If you're playing like
everyone's gonna hate each other.
There's a number of games. I mean, the new thing out there right now with board games is co-op games.
Yeah.
And I've played a few. There's a.
Yeah. You want to make sure that you're not the problem either. There's instances where a player could just be taking advantage of a situation, and it makes total sense. Don't cock block him because it wasn't what you planned on doing. I mean, let players do what they want for the most part,
within reason,
until it sort of basically brings the whole party down. Like if you have one guy just shitting on the entire campaign, just clip his wings or kick him out of the group. Or whatever you have to do.
Yeah, and everyone does have a bad night, so you got to give everyone a mulligan. But if it keeps happening week in, week out, And maybe even after that first night, you can be like, listen, what's going on here? And they might be like, oh, I'm sorry, I wanted to kind of do this. I just got into a mood. That happens. The next week, they're fine. Easiest thing
Yeah,
to
because
do,
I mean, a lot of people use D&D and just getting together with friends is like a therapeutic thing anyway. So if they need to sort of, if they just have one of those days, you need to recognize that as well.
Yeah, and
you're by no means some sort of counselor or anything like that. Do not.
Yeah,
we do not condone giving advice to people. We'll ask people to do that unless it's DM tips.
Yeah,
but
that we're experts on.
Don't be like if some guy's getting over a bad breakup or whatever.
Yeah.
Don't like send in an NPC that is the embodiment of his ex-girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah, you're
and have him roll. He's just it's gonna get weird. Don't be that guy.
And honestly, there are times like we've done this too, even on our own show and even here. The first half hour is us just BSing, and that
the first half hour is pretty generous. Usually, it's the entire night.
Yeah, the entire night. You gotta when you're putting this thing together, give that half hour in the beginning and maybe even half hour at the end for people just to decompress.
Yeah. Now there is
that would probably
there's sometimes where players, it even happens on Guild of Fools, where someone will constantly have a side conversation going during the thick of things.
What are you trying to say?
Just saying. That's all I'm trying to say.
I'm terrible.
It's not the end of the world,
no.
But it is kind of disrespectful to the DM when it happens. And, I mean, you can choose to let it fly or not, because really the only person that it's hurting is you. So if you have thick skin, you don't really have to worry about it. I mean, you obviously want everyone to have a good time, and if it does devolve into a weird side conversation that has nothing to do with the game, that's fine.
It happens. You just gotta kind of roll with that, but you just can't make it. You just gotta be like, guys, back to this. And sometimes that happens when you split the party. Sometimes the best thing you can do when you have a problem player is split the party, because then that lets everyone kind of at least play for a little bit without him or her, and it can be a her. And then for at least half an hour, 20 minutes or so, don't make it an hour where they're not active, because then they're just going to get actively pissed off. Then bring them back. Sometimes people just need a timeout. Also,
let the other players that are affected by a problem player sort of know. You don't have to just outright tell them, hey, that guy over there's an asshole while he's sitting there. I'm going to deal with him. Let them know that you're going to deal with it. Otherwise, they're going to not want to play.
Yeah.
And then you don't have a party anymore other than the guy who thinks he won because he's the only one left standing.
Yeah, and when you get into this hobby, it's not about...
It's not about winning.
No.
It's never about winning.
I mean, I can count maybe on my hand out of the hundreds of campaigns that I've been in. I've won 10 that finished and ended correctly. I'm still in campaigns from years ago.
I wouldn't call that winning, though. That's just you wrapped up the story.
Yeah, but even then you don't. Yeah, you wrapped up the story, which is winning. The losing is having a story set aside, you spending months on it, and then it falls apart because of outside interference.
Yeah. If you have multiple problem players, it's probably just best to salvage the players that aren't problems and just kind of do a different campaign.
Tell them a different time would show up. Yeah.
See what you can do with that, because I mean, you might even encounter groups where, like, let's say you're running for about 6 people, and 3 of them are like really good friends, and they're all just causing trouble constantly because the other 3 aren't necessarily a tight knit group as well. Yeah. And then it's always like a 1 versus 3 fight. Yeah. You can't really do much other than just cut them out. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the nuclear option, is to cut them out. But you don't always have that option, because, like we were saying earlier, if you're hosting the game at your place, it's easy to do that. Yeah. Just don't invite them back. But if you're playing at maybe someone else's house that is the problem player, it's a tough situation, because you either had to decide, are you just going to leave altogether? Yeah. I mean, I've had some people tell me that they were asked to DM when they didn't necessarily want to DM. Yeah. And what they did is they just immediately killed the entire party. Yeah, that happens. Because the whole party was problem players, and they didn't want to DM. Yeah. So. And problem too is what you want to deal with those situations is, run for a week or 2, and maybe it's just kind of everyone adjusting to you DMing. But if it goes on past week 2 and you're not having fun, just
throw the nuclear option out there, and it'd be like, yeah, then take a week off.
Yeah.
Legitimately, just take a week off, play a video game,
Or
go to the movies,
Try and nip
get
it
a
in
social life.
nip it in the bud as soon as possible, because if they see that they can get away with being a problem player, they're gonna keep doing it. And it's just gonna get worse.
There's I can tell you from experience. I've been in a campaign for years where there was always one guy that decided the show's all about him. Josh. No, I'm joking. No, the show's always about him, and nothing gets done, and then people get angry, and then you're having side conversations for 2 hours, and you're wondering, why am I in this room? I have better things to do with my life. I want out. And maybe you have to come to that conclusion. And it's one of those things, it's easy for us as DMs to say, all right, nip it in the bud. When you're a player having to sit through that, it's infuriating.
Yeah. The other option that I don't recommend is being an adult about it and telling the person straight up with them and being honest. But I'm going to assume that, like us, anyone watching this video doesn't necessarily have the greatest of social skills.
Nope.
So that's probably not the best way to do it. That's why I recommend the antisocial method of just trying to avoid it before it even begins.
Yeah. Now, the other thing you can do is early on just kill the character. Honestly, just your character has a heart attack and dies.
Yeah.
And then that's the warning. Like, oh, what do you mean? Like, your character has a heart attack and dies. Like, oh, okay. That you want to give them a verbal warning in front of the group, and then maybe it might be for timeout.
That's another good idea, is to employ some sort of 3-strike method or something like that. Let them know they're fucking up.
Yeah.
And you really need to let them know. You can't just kind of shrug it off. And if they read three strikes, you just kill them or get them out of the group. Let them know that. I mean, if you have to go to this line, let them know that they're replaceable. Say there's other people wanting to play, so you can go in the room for them, and you're not fitting in that great.
Yeah.
Beat it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the thing is too. I mean, it's easy for us to tell you on the tabletop. The worst part is, I would assume, trying to do this online. At that point, I don't know what advice I give you other than disconnect them.
Yeah, that's the ideal situation when you're playing online, because you just kick them out. Like you just click, and you don't even.
What happened? Oh, we lost you for like 2 hours.
So
I don't know what happened.
I mean, if you're dealing with an online situation, and I guess we could extend this advice to not even for DMs, but if you're another player that's having to deal with a problem player, probably want to go to the DM to see if they can do anything about it. It's not necessarily like they have a higher power than everyone, but they control what happens in the game, and that's when problems are occurring. So they should sort of take responsibility for their players.
And if you have a DM that shrugs and does, as we know, about it, at that point in time, you may want to reconsider how much effort you want to put into this thing. And that's up to you. Like I said, we do DM tips here, but it would be kind of blindsided of us of not to say, like, when you're a player and you have other problem players and you don't feel comfortable in that environment, talk to the DM. Now, if he shrugs his shoulders or she shrugs her shoulders, at that point in time, you may want to consider just being the guy that sits there quietly, plays on their iPhone, and then people get ticked off. And then when you leave, no one's really disappointed. You're not letting anyone down, and you're not disappointed either, because really, whatever, at that point in time.
Do you have any advice for problem players themselves? How can they identify if they're a problem player?
If you notice everyone giving you stink eye, that would be one. No, honestly,
if the DM has killed you 3 weeks consecutively in a row,
what
probably has a problem.
At some point in time, everyone becomes a problem player. Everyone does. Everyone thinks they know better than the DM. Everyone becomes a rules Nazi. Everyone thinks the entire thing's about them when it's really not about them. It happens. What I would suggest at that point in time is, if you have a self-awareness, if you realize, like, wow, I'm trying to get everyone's attention and I'm level 5, everyone's level 2. If, everyone's playing on their iPhone and it's just me talking to the GM for about 45 minutes nonstop and everyone's bored, then you have a problem. And sometimes that's the GM's problem, but sometimes as a player, you have a certain responsibility to the group. You kind of make a commitment when you do this stuff. I mean, this isn't the Marines, but you make a commitment to everybody at that table, like, everyone's
Yeah,
equal.
again, you're never the main character. I'm sorry. But when
Yeah,
you're playing with
seriously.
other people, there's your time versus their time.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a greater good thing. You want
Yeah.
the majority of people you're hanging out with to enjoy your company.
You
If
ha-
they don't,
Right.
you're a psychopath.
Yeah.
You're there just to piss off a bunch of your friends or,
Yeah.
or strangers even.
Yeah.
What's your end game? I don't know. You really need to kind of that's something you're gonna need to get counseling for. But
Yeah, what you have to realize is it's sort of like this. I equate to role playing like a TV show. Every TV show is an ensemble. This isn't a movie where there's there's one or two actors in the movie and there's just a bunch of henchmen and supporting actors, but there's a star. When you play Dungeons and Dragons or any role playing game or any co-op game, you're part of a team. And if you don't understand that you're part of a team, and if you're not willing to help out players, especially new players, then you're screwing the team over, and you're screwing yourself over too, because if you're part of a team that basically like everyone gets levels when everything's beaten, and you're standing off to the side while the party's taking an obscene amount of damage, I wouldn't give you levels. I would give you negative levels at that point. Like negative experience points. Why? What's your character alignment? Well, I'm neutral good. Okay, so you're not chaotic evil, or you're not anything like that. Play the character.
yeah.
Yeah, just put, and really it's up to, and as a DM, you've got to understand too, certain characters can't fit within big parties. You
Well,
can't
again,
have chaotic
you
evil
are
in a party.
God.
Yeah.
Flip their alignment.
There's
Kind of
easy ways to do it.
throw
Yeah.
them a curveball and see how they deal with it. If they play the same character after you've switched their character's personality over and over again, you kind of need to let them know that's not going to fly. Like
Yeah.
have some god that is like, hey, that's not cool, man.
Or
Zap, you're dead.
I'll tell you what. There was an.
Do you have any anecdotal evidence on how you've dealt with problem players before?
The thing is, I really haven't done too much with problems.
I've got one. If you
You
want
got-
to
no,
try to think of
the
something
only thing I
anytime.
can think of is there was a time. Okay, this is a long story. So this is I'm gonna not use names. We'll just call him A. Was a GM. A had this massive campaign that was continuing from the year before, and all of us were there. Myself and about probably 5 or 6 other players. It's a big room. It was actually a small room, but a lot of people in the room. And then we'll call him M. Was playing a druid cleric and decided instead of helping the party fight off an army of zombies, he was going to fight with an axe, letting A's character that he made and took days making die. For the rest of the campaign, A decided to kill this character, but he was going to play the long con with him. And then waited to the last possible second when it looked like the guy was going to be the hero of everything and brutally murdered him with one of my characters because he said, in quote, Joe's characters are always lame. That's
So
how
he
you
killed
do.
2 birds with one stone then. He took the problem player that was always causing problems in the party and took the problem player Joe, who was always lame, and made him interesting.
Yeah.
So boom, 2 for 2.
Yeah, and I have never seen him more furious than he slammed a chair down. But what's your story?
I've run campaigns where I've had players. It's pretty frequent on Guild of Fools, especially when they play online through whatever voice program we use on the show. We had like an epidemic of min-maxers, and they are the worst because it's like everyone will start fresh at level 1 with their wooden bucklers and their broken daggers and then their magic missile and then that's it, and they have like 3 hit points. And you have some other asshole that has like 24 and like 3 different stats because he took a certain class, or he does like 90 minimum damage per hit if he, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
I've had someone that I could never hit, and the thing is, that's not a problem. I can always make stronger monsters and stuff. But when it got to the point where if I have one monster swing at this guy and it might hit him and do a decent chunk of his damage, but if it hits anybody else in the party, they're dead.
Yeah.
And then this guy would run away so that the rest of the party would have to deal with this impossible fucking monster. At one point, they were in a forest. Wild Boar charged in, gored him, mortally wounded him, so he just sat there and died for the next 3 hours. And no one in the party even bothered to help the guy. So it was pretty clear that no one really liked him, and luckily he was playing online with us, so just didn't invite him back.
Yeah.
But there's been other players that it wasn't necessarily a min-max thing, but they would just do things that were... There's a lot of people that try to sort of insert their fantasies that aren't necessarily family-friendly in the campaign, and they will take advantage of other players when they're sleeping and such. I just killed their player. That's the point where I just killed their character.
Yeah. You have to. You have no choice.
Yeah.
And it
again,
becomes
that's one of those situations where if you let them get away with it, they're gonna keep doing shit like that. So it's best to just nip that shit in the bud immediately. And then it was someone that wanted to keep playing and make a new character, and I just kind of put them on a suspension thing, and eventually they stopped asking.
Yeah.
But
it's just you can't allow that to happen, especially if you're in especially you cannot allow rape between party members, especially if...
Now, if you're playing in a group of friends where they don't give a shit about that,
Whoa.
that's fine if you want to do that. What you guys do behind closed doors is fine, but if you're playing in a group where you know someone's going to be comfortable with not necessarily rape, but just any other situation that's going to trigger them or whatever, you want to immediately let them know that's not going to fly, because everyone at the table has the right to have a good time.
Yeah.
And if you're going to ruin someone's good time, you're a shitty person, you're not going to be allowed to play with us.
Yeah, I mean, that's... Even as an experienced player, I just have a real problem with the whole rape situation.
Yeah, I mean, everyone normally would, but if you're playing, if someone watching is in a group of clan members and you're all playing some really racist campaign, obviously racism is okay in your campaign.
Yeah.
But don't invite someone in or expect to be able to bring that elsewhere.
No.
And, I'm not saying racism is okay either.
No.
I'm saying what you do behind closed doors is your own fucking business. But if you're going to subject anyone else to it, as a DM, you need to make sure that they are censored. Yeah. So
anything else?
That's really all I have to say about that.
Yeah.
We're going to touch more on, unless you guys want to leave some suggestions in the comments below about what we should do the next episode on. I think we might delve into kind of a less serious episode next time, and we'll just talk about the that guys of the parties. I mean, this we kind of touched.
That is that guy, yeah.
We touched on a few of them as problem players, but sometimes they're not necessarily problem players, and they're more of just anomalies in and of themselves.
Yeah. Or so we can talk about like how to make a campaign fun. Yeah. That could be another thing too. Yeah. Something a little bit more like.
But leave your suggestions or comments, obviously in the comments section below.
Yeah.
But we will see you guys in maybe a week or two again when we film the next episode. But thanks for watching. This is Josh.
This is Joe.
Good night.
Bye.